The Porsche 911 is arguably the most iconic sports car ever created. With its timeless design, unorthodox rear engine layout, and incredible motorsport success, the 911 has carved out a place in the hearts and dreams of many. But there's one 911 that became so infamous it created a legacy of its own. Even in a time before social media, whispers turned to rumors and word of the car spread around the globe, influencing enthusiasts, comic books, anime, movies, and even policy, before its own notoriety, which had lifted the car and owner to such heights, would eventually be its downfall. This is the story of the most infamous Porsche 911 ever made. This 911 was built in Stuttgart in 1979 before making its way to Japan. During this time, Japan was experiencing record-breaking economic growth and quickly became the second largest economy in the world. With money to spend, people were able to afford new, sportier cars and would take them out each night to show them off on the Tomei Expressway, with hundreds of car enthusiasts flooding the wide pass. It wasn't long before clubs started forming and racing against each other. There was Tokyo Group Shadow, Autobahn Racing, Over 220 Club, Arya Memiya, Tops Racing Team, and others. But the club to beat was the ACC, the American Car Club. The head of the ACC was Koichi Okawa, who drove a Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. Okawa was part of the famous Tuner Trust and leaned on the team's experience to tune up the big 7-point-something-liter LS6 for around 500 horsepower and recreated the body panels and FRP to shave 600 pounds off the car. The result was not just a quick street car, but possibly the fastest car in Japan. To prove this, Okawa took the big American bird to Yotabe, the proving grounds. Yotabe was managed by a research institute who aimed to improve automotive safety via testing, but sometimes they took on a different kind of research, like finding out who had the fastest car in Japan. At this time, that was indeed the Trans Am, which took the record with a top speed of 264.7 km. This achievement meant a lot of eyes on Okawa, but there was a younger member who wanted his share of the limelight too, and he was the recipient of that black 79 911 Turbo, Eiichi Yoshida. Yoshida had a ton of respect for Okawa, but decided to leave the ACC to form his own team and build a name for himself. In 1982, with Yoshida as chair, and 3 other founding members, Midnight was formed. At its core, the team was a bunch of friends in their early 20s looking to have some fun, but soon they started to race and become more and more competitive. By now, the Tomei Expressway was becoming overcrowded, both with people racing and with spectators. After a few tragic deaths, police began cracking down, so Yoshida and the Midnight team decided to try a new spot, the Wangan. They were among the first to test out this newly paved route, but soon more racers made the switch and came to challenge them. Midnight gained a reputation for being unbeatable on this new course. Stories spread quickly, even reaching Michiharu Kusunoki, who asked Yoshida's permission before releasing the aptly named manga, Wangan Midnight. Wangan Midnight has since gone on to generate a successful anime, games, and multiple movies. Many of the characters took inspiration from real-life racers at the time, so of course, one of the main characters drove a Porsche 911 Turbo. With all the eyes on Midnight, there was an influx of new applicants to the team, along with other companies selling knockoffs of their iconic silver sticker. To maintain their reputation, Yoshida trademarked the logo to stop fakes and created a strict system to filter the influx of new applicants. The barrier to entry rose over the years, with the speed required to get in moving up to over 250 kilometers an hour, and not just for a few seconds on a pull, but for long durations on the public course. And this was just the first step. Next, you would be assigned a mentor and given a pink sticker. From there, you'd be expected to meet with the team every Saturday night at the Royal Host, or later Yoshida's shop, before the team made their way out to the highway and began racing. Every so often, the current members would vote for which trainees they let in, and you'd only get in if you had all of the current members unanimously accept you. This process often took years, and most of the apprentices dropped out before receiving the coveted silver sticker placed diagonally on the car. Even after all of that, You could be let go in an instant if you lost a race to a rival team. This seldom happened though, as Yoshida himself had to give approval for any races outside of the team. This strict protocol ensured the team had the best racers regardless of what car they drove, their political views, wealth, or other external factors. As a result, unlike the ACC, which was all American cars, Midnight had a diverse mix of cars and drivers from various walks of life. But of course, certain cars were better suited to this kind of racing, like the 911, which had already been built to dominate the Autobahn. Even a stock Porsche 911 Turbo, or 930 for short, could run around 260 km an hour, and the engine still had a lot more to offer with some tuning. Within Midnight, there were some memorable and very fast 911s, like the Auto Garage TBK 911. This body shop made custom front bumpers with giant lights made specifically for the Wangan, and large vents to cool the brakes throughout the runs. These bumpers can be found on many of the Midnight 911s, including Yoshida's. Some of the members went even further with the body modifications, like the warm Yokohama 930, a mix of 935 inspirations with Ferrari F40S headlights. Some members went to twin turbos and spent years trying to get the most out of the platform, like the colorful Abflug Porsche, which crashed on the Wangan before being reincarnated as a 700 horsepower track monster still driven today. Before it was closed down, many members of Midnight would go to Yatabe and post their top speeds for bragging rights. However, the 911's unique layout and suspension didn't seem to inspire confidence on the bank turns of Yatabe, so many stuck to the streets, or in some cases, the mountains. Komatani was a man who loved his 911 Turbo Carrera, so much that he named his two kids, Tabo and Carrera. Komatani was different from the Wangan racers though, and focused on grip, naming his car the Traction Master 911. He got special permission from Yoshida to race his 930 on the Hakone Turnpike, a section of road almost 14 kilometers long, which went up nearly a kilometer in elevation. Somehow, he managed to maintain an average speed of 141 kilometers an hour through the mountains for a sector time of 5:55. This kind of speed required pushing the car to the absolute limits, scraping along the guardrails, to the point where he couldn't even open his doors. To prevent sliding out any more than necessary or going right off the mountain, Komatani would personally go around the course with the broom and sweep the turns clean before making a run. Another danger of the turnpike was all the spectators that would show up to see the legendary car make a run. So the team would use all kinds of tactics to try to trick people into leaving the area and ensuring it was clear. People wondered what made the car so fast, but apparently there wasn't much, and the car was pretty close to stock horsepower. Instead, the crazy speeds were thanks to the incredible driving skills of Komatani. Yoshida's 911 was far from stock though. While Yoshida worked hard to ensure Midnight kept their reputation as the best, he also wanted the same for his own Porsche 930. With the help of team members, a big turbo, forged pistons, and more, he got the car to nearly double the horsepower it had from the factory. He painted it a new color and took it to the Tokyo Auto Show for others to see. When he took it to Yatabe in 1985, it ran just shy of the 300 km an hour mark, as it couldn't do the banks at over 260, but he claimed much faster speeds on the Wangan. He wanted more though, and not just the best in Japan, but in the world. A couple years later, in 1987, Ruf, the German car manufacturer, would use a bare chassis from Porsche as a base to create the fastest production car in the world, the Ruf CTR Yellowbird. The Yellowbird, although it had less power than Yoshida's 911, hit a top speed of 342 km an hour on the Nardo Ring in Italy. This was way faster than the previous record holder, the Porsche 959, which had hit 317 km an hour. In terms of production cars, the Ruf's record wouldn't be broken for another 6 years, but Yoshida wanted to break it far sooner. To do so, he knew he'd need more than just the team members, and again, he wanted the best. So, via fax messages back and forth to Stuttgart, he asked for Porsche themselves to modify his car, with all the best parts they had for their own factory race cars. This wasn't something Porsche really did at the time though. The only similar example was for Mansour Oje, who had a strong in as the CEO of TAG, the company working with Porsche to develop an engine for a championship-winning McLaren F1 car. His 911 was heavily modified to look like a 935, and was the first of sorts. It even had the first wood dash in a 911. but on the power end, it was lacking compared to a real 935. Yoshida wanted the opposite though, and asked for his car to look as close to stock as possible, while still making it the ultimate Wangan warrior. And somehow, someway, he got Porsche to agree, and they went all out. Rather than replicating the body from a 935, they used all the business bits, like engine pieces and a K33S turbo. The exhaust was unrestricted, and onlookers said the car sounded similar to a jet taking off. The intercooler was 3 times larger than stock to keep the car going for a full 15 to 30 minute sprint on the Wangan. The 4-speed gearbox was changed to comfortably reach over the 340 km/h goal, and used the clutch and flywheel from a Porsche 956 Group C race car. Porsche even took the brakes from a 962 to pair with the 935 setup. They also touched up the suspension and removed some weight from the already light car. The very 80s white interior was updated with fiberglass Recaro lollipop seats and a custom steering wheel from a 964 Carrera RS to complete the look. On the outside, Yoshida wanted to keep the car looking as stock as possible, but that didn't stop the engineers from getting creative. A lot of the tricks used were similar to the roof car, like using the RSR style mirrors to reduce drag. But there were some more subtle tricks too, like the rear wing, which looked standard at first glance, but was actually raised and angled to provide more downforce. A 17-inch forged aluminum wheel package was also installed, which used a Denlock system found in Group C race cars like the 956 and 962. This system helped the tire stay on the rim in the event of a high-speed puncture, which was of course super important when racing on the Wangan. With all these upgrades, the car was loaded back in a container and sent to Japan. In 1988, the car arrived back at Yatabe again, and easily broke the 300 km/h mark on low boost. The new K33S could make 1.26 bar, which translated to around 540 horsepower. But when Yoshida started to turn it up, the engine blew, and the car was sent back nearly 10,000 kilometers to Germany again. Yoshida was close friends with the lead of the racing development program in Waisak, and essentially gave him carte blanche with the 930. He had worked on the legendary RSR turbo many years prior, and applied this experience to eke out improvements all over the car, even altering the frame. Apparently, 6 engines in various configurations were tested, 5 of which let go, and the 6th is still in the car to this day. To feed this new, more powerful engine, the car needed more air. Rather than use fender ducts like the roof car, again the team took inspiration from the RSR turbo and installed NACA ducts in the rear quarter windows to be a bit more subtle. This time the car made over 600 horsepower, which really is crazy. That's more than the 911 turbo today, while weighing around 600 pounds less in a car made in the 70s. When the car returned to Japan again, Yatabe was booked to see how fast the new car could go, but it was rainy and foggy, so the session was cancelled. What happened next is also foggy though, and different people tell different stories. Ironically, around this point, the internet was starting to catch on, and access to information on the car was freely available worldwide. Yoshida, thanks to his connection with Porsche, had opened Midnight Porsche Works, so Japanese customers could have their cars worked on as well. They created a website with all of the specs for the 930 and a timeline of events. The site even had a message board, where people seemed more interested in the 930 and street racing than the services the shop offered. I've heard the car did make it back to Yatabe, but again struggled with the banks and only managed 308, which wasn't as crazy anymore. Supposedly, in-field testing though, the car achieved its goal and surpassed the 340 mark. Daijiro Inada, the editor of Option magazine, commented that while the car had inferior handling and poor low RPM acceleration compared to modern cars, it was incredible to drive at 340 km/h and was astonished by its ability to do so for 15-minute jaunts. So, while other cars and even other Porsches would go on to perform better at Yatabe, Yoshida's 930 went back to the streets and held on to its reputation as the emperor of the Wangan. Times were changing though, and so was street racing. There are rumors of certain incidents involving civilians and biker gangs that led to the end of Midnight, but other sources confirm many members continued to race.